Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the discussion series on Visited by Voices Live. I'm joined today by Jami. Jami, say hello.
Hi.
All right, everyone out there in the chat, make sure you can hear us both well. Just please let us know.
Yes, please.
And yeah, because it is a YouTube world, and that means nothing works right. All right, we have folks coming in. We have 11 out there right now. That's a pretty good starting place. I'm pretty happy with that. So, Jami, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself? You'll do a better job than I would because I'm horrible at introductions.
I'm Jami. I'm normally on Twin Peaks Coffee Time. I come out of the Twin Peaks world. I'm a huge horror fan. I've been a huge horror fan for almost my entire life, probably younger than most should be. And that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to say about that. I can tell you how I got into horror if you like.
We'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
But since you mentioned the behemoth in the room, so Twin Peaks is one of those things that I don't think it's horror exactly, but it
Right.
can be. It's a
Right.
square rectangle situation.
Right.
Because even when it's not being horrific, there's something off about the show.
Yes.
And it's not just a David Lynch thing, because that's what everyone rushes to, but Twin Peaks is a lot larger than David Lynch.
Yes.
Which is the irony of how we think about it versus what it is. So, how did you become a Twin Peaks super fan? Let's start there.
Okay. It was 1990, and my mom came into my bedroom and said, "Hey, I know you love David Lynch," because I already loved David Lynch at this time. And I was 16. And she said, "There's this new show coming on called Twin Peaks by David Lynch, and I think you're going to really, really like it." And this was a few weeks before it actually aired. And then Easter Sunday, I sat down with my Easter basket and I sat there and I ate all my Easter candy, not all of it, of course, but I ate a bunch of Easter candy while watching the Twin Peaks season premiere. And I was hooked. I was hooked right from the very beginning, probably before, because like I said, I already liked David Lynch. So, and I had already been to see, Blue Velvet. I was already a fan of what the book Wild at Heart. I knew the movie was going to be coming out. I had already seen Elephant Man. As a matter of fact, Elephant Man is my reason for loving David Lynch. I was 8 and we had HBO and Showtime and all those things, and it was always on. If not MTV, how it was back then. um, so I was watching, these channels and I'd see these movies, and one of them was Elephant Man, and I would watch it over and over and over again. And my mom said, "Why do you like this sad movie so much?" And I said, I don't really know. I just like it. I think this guy has talent. I think it looks beautiful. And my mom was like, "You are a weird 8-year-old." Which I was a weird 8-year-old
It's something to be
because
proud of.
exactly. But she is the reason why. Her and my father, they pretty much inspired all of my mother did. My dad not so much. My mother though. She inspired it from birth because if I was really thinking about this today because I was trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say about how I fell in love with horror. I think I fell in love with horror before I ever watched a movie. And the reason why is because my mom used to read me Grimm's fairy tales. And I used to love them, especially Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, which I made her read me over and over and over again when I was little, long before I ever saw a horror movie. In When Jaws came out, my parents decided that they were going to go to the movies, the drive-in, to see it together. It was 2 movies. It was Freebie and the Bean. I don't know if you know what that is.
Something tells me I'm happy I do not know what that is.
Yeah, it was. I don't really even remember it, to be honest. The only thing I remember about it is that this guy fell on a grill, and I was really upset over that because at 18 months old, I dumped a pot of coffee over my head, and was burned on this side of my body. And I still have scars to this day. They're just, you can't see them very well. But I remembered that, obviously. And my parents were like, oh my God, she's upset about I kept calling him the hot man. Well, Jaws was coming on next, but they thought I'd go to sleep, but I didn't. I didn't. And I was fascinated. I was fascinated with this movie. And they start, it comes to the part where the Jaws is going to come up and he's going to bite the boat in half and bite the guy in half. And my parents both stick their hands up, and and I'm in the back seat and I'm going like this. And I'm like, I want to see. Well, I saw. I wasn't scared. And they were like, why aren't you scared? And I said, you told me it was fake. They told me at a very young age not to believe anything I saw on television or in movies because it was all fake. So they were pretty impressed with a 3-year-old. I was 3. This 3-year-old watching Jaws and being fascinated by it and knowing that it was fake. And that is how my ride with horror started, was all the way back with Jaws. The next thing I remember was my mom was watching this movie, The Manitou. Mm-hmm. And I was about 5, and I got up to get a drink of water in the middle of the night. And I come out and I see this little freaky Indian guy on the TV coming out of this woman's back. And I freaked out, but I liked that feeling. See? So my mom, I made her tell me the whole story about the movie the next day. I'm like, tell me all about it, tell me. So she started telling me stories about all these horror movies she knew about and horror books she knew about, and, anything she could, Twilight Zone episodes, whatever she could get me interested in. And the next thing after that was the Halloween commercials on TV. I was 5 and they're advertising Halloween. And as soon as that music would cue, I'd stop everything and stare at that television until it was over. And I was fascinated. And I remember telling myself at 5, I want to see that. My mom said, you can't see that, honey, you're too young. I was like, all right, fine. Well, it wasn't even 2 years later. It's 1980, or no, actually it was 3 years because it would have been 81. My babysitters were going to watch Friday the 13th when it premiered on HBO. And I begged my mom, please, can I stay up and watch it with babysitters? Please, can I stay up and watch it? Please. She thought about it for weeks. And finally, she's like, all right, you can watch it. 81, I was about, I guess I'd be 9 or 8. So after Friday the 13th, the original, that was it. I was hooked. I was always watching horror after that. Every single chance I had. My mom didn't care. She didn't stop me. She didn't stop me from buying horror books or seeing anything like that, because she knew that I would be cool about it. I remember when we went and saw Blue Velvet, she went with me. And when the Frank Booth rape scene comes up, she's stiff in her chair. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to be so cool. She's not going to worry one little bit about how I feel about this. I sat there totally stone cold, face, not scared, not upset, a little disturbed, of course, but in a good way. And pretty much ever since then, it's been just constant. Horror is my number one genre. Horror is what I go through for every single time. You can ask my husband, he'll tell you. I drive him crazy. He doesn't like to watch horror so much, but I do. So I make him watch a lot of it.
As you should. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that to go back about 8 paragraphs, Elephant Man is a film that I really enjoy and I like, even though it's intentionally trying to make you not completely like the film. It definitely is a film that wants to be an arm's length from you. But the interesting thing is, I can't get out of my head that Lynch must have watched the Val Lewton horror films from the 40s nonstop to prepare for that film, because that's what that film looks like. That's what that film feels like.
Yes, it's gorgeous. I think it's a gorgeous movie, and I like the content. I like the story behind it. He deserved the Oscar. Didn't he get an Oscar for that? I'm pretty sure, right?
He was nominated. I do not think he walked with it.
Oh,
though.
he didn't walk away with it. That's too bad because he deserved it.
Well, a lot of artists that operate on that level were being punished for working anywhere near the genre. People have to remember that Stanley Kubrick was berated for The Shining, which is funny because today, if you ask most of his fans, like, what is his most iconic film,
The Shining.
The Shining wins that battle, even if they're not genre fans. So hopefully, at some point, it comes around and people are willing to accept the genre as just part of the landscape of American cinema. Eric Hayden has a question for you, actually. He asks, what is your favorite sequel to a horror film?
I got to think about that for a second. I'm going to go with Friday the 13th too, because I love Amy Steele and I thought it was just as good as the original and it brought Jason to life. So for me, it's going to be that one. Otherwise, I would have to go with Scream 2, which I know you're not going to agree with at all. So
it's not too late to stop this broadcast. So let's talk about Friday for a second, because everything in the horror genre goes back to Friday the 13th because it is the Star Wars of our generation.
Right.
And that's what the mainstream critics are never going to accept that, but it's true. And at this point, there are more good Friday the 13th films than there are Star Wars films.
I agree with that.
So there's no reason to not be filled with pride. But the original Friday seems to be a big, big, big point for a lot of people in their formative years. It seems that film, more than any other of its time period, even more than the original Halloween, really drove people to the genre and really got people to accept it as part of their internal culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that you said that, because I would certainly say it was a gateway drug for me as well.
Yeah, I see. I think a lot of people, especially people our age, are going to say that, because almost every friend of mine who is into the horror genre always says, "Oh, Friday the 13th was my first horror movie." It is everybody's gateway drug.
It's amazing that Sean Cunningham then does not get the credit. He's never listed in that pantheon of horror, like auteurs, your Tobe Hoopers and your John Carpenters and your Wes Cravens. His name never comes up in that first paragraph.
And yet
he crafted the film that seems to have defined a generation of horror fans.
Yes. And inspired us too.
And maybe a wide swath of fans don't like what he's done since the mid 80s. And I can appreciate that, but that's pretty true of a lot of those guys. If you're sitting there telling me that The Mangler is as good as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a problem. I mean, there's some cognitive dissonance going on there, right?
I'm not even a fan of The Mangler, although I do like the story. It's not one of my favorite movies.
Well, the story is kind of satirical, though. Like, it's kidding with the audience. The reader is in on the joke. The film doesn't really try to do that. I think Robert Englund does. He's being intentionally so over the top, but the rest of the movie tries to play it kind of straight, and it's about a folding machine. I mean, I don't know. But it's interesting too, because John Carpenter would be another example. Like, if you're comparing Ghost of Mars to Halloween, so yeah, you could look at later Sean Cunningham and say it doesn't live up to early Sean Cunningham, but it's true of all these guys.
Yeah.
The only guy it's not true of is David Cronenberg, because he got the hell out.
Yeah. Cronenberg's good though. I mean, I like Existence quite a bit, even though it's gross. I really liked it.
Have you ever seen The Work Print?
No.
I'll have to get you a copy of The Work Print. Very different movie.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
I'd like that.
Yeah. Much more Videodrome Part 2.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, I've forgotten. I haven't even seen Videodrome in so long. I can't remember hardly anything about it except for him going up and kissing those big Debbie hairy lips.
But to be fair, who wouldn't kiss big Debbie hairy lips?
True.
So, also, we had another question in here. Let me back up because Orc is here. So, of course, there's a lot in the comments.
I see. Hi,
How are you
Orc.
doing? How are you, sir? It's been forever or a couple days. Okay. DJ Donnelly asks you, goosebumps or are you afraid of the dark? And I'm actually going to add to that question. I mean, you and I are kind of close in age.
Uh-huh.
So those might be a little late for us.
Yes. I was going to say, the hilarious House of Frightenstein was what I watched as a kid.
Sure.
Do you remember that?
I do. I absolutely
That's
do.
awesome. I'm so glad because no one ever remembers it. I loved that show.
There was that, and there was the original Ghostbusters show as well, which is based on a film from the 40s that no one remembers either.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Oh,
and Goosebumps. Yeah, I was too old for Goosebumps and too old for Afraid of the Dark.
But Bunnicula was out as a book. Do you remember Bunnicula, the vampire bunny rabbit?
No, yeah. I wish I would have known about that.
Yeah, there was Bunnicula, and then there was Choose Your Own Adventures. Sometimes got dark.
Yes.
Yeah. DJ Donnelly also asks, do you think it's strange that some people laugh at slasher movie deaths?
It depends. It depends on the type. Like if somebody's laughing at Hostel, I'm thinking they're kind of weird. But if somebody's laughing, at like
Dr. Giggles.
Yeah. Or I was gonna say, what's his face there? In Friday the 13th 5 in the outhouse.
I don't know what that is.
What was his name?
I've never seen that movie.
The one that was singing, ooh, baby, ooh, baby.
Someone in the chat help, because I'm not going to do this. So I think you hit on a big part, though. The slasher film is too wide a genre to make any single pronouncement about. How depending on how you define the slasher genre, if you're including the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre in it, which I would, well, no one's going to be laughing at Franklin's death. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But then again, and then you flash forward, and if you consider the 1986 film Trick or Treat a slasher film, yeah, you're going to laugh at every single death in the movie for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I remember that one. It's been a long time since I saw it, but yeah, I remember that one as being kind of humorous.
Because it's so over the top 80s. Even at that time, I remember thinking, I can, I don't have a sense of smell, but I'm going to lie here for a second. I can smell the Aquanet watching this movie. It's that 80s.
That's why I said, I said that about Friday 5 because Friday 5 to this day remains the funnest time I've ever had in the theater in my life. It was Halloween night, Friday 5, I think what 1984 would have been. And right after I went to a haunted house that my, local town used to put on. And it was so fun. Everybody was throwing stuff. It was loud and rowdy and people were cheering and screaming. And I don't care. I didn't care that I was 11 years old. I snuck into the theater with my babysitters. And it was, even though I hated the movie and was so pissed, I was so pissed. Me and my babysitter sitting next to me and she goes, what? Because we were all like so angry about who the killer was. We were like, this isn't fair. I'm sure you've heard everything about, that went on after that moment. Everybody was pissed about that. And then they talked about it. And it's like the main reason why people don't like it is because.
Oh, I disagree with that entirely.
Oh, yeah. What?
I don't care that Jason is not the killer in the film at all. That's not.
Yeah, I heard you say that before.
I think the film looks like, so please keep this in context because our lives live in context, right? Mm. Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, was one of the first horror films I saw in the theater, and certainly the second R-rated horror film I saw in theaters. I'm a young kid. I'm 11, 12, something, I don't know. Convinced my grandmother to take us. And Friday 4 was such a impactful experience. That mood, that atmosphere, that nihilism. Like, as a kid, I'd never experienced something so bleak and so unrelenting. Now imagine a year later, or a year and a half later, I think more appropriately for me, seeing part 5, which has no mood, no atmosphere. It goes for the jokes all the time. None of the deaths mean anything. They're introducing characters just to slaughter them off. It's a different experience, and I hated every moment. And here's the biggest thing: it just looks cheap.
You're right. It does.
It just looks cheap compared to 4. Or I'd seen the first 4 up to that point. All of those look like expensive films to my untrained young eyes. 5 looked like a television commercial quality, or I wouldn't have said pornography at that point. Today, looking back, that's what it looks like. But at the time, I was like, this looks like a cheap television thing or something. This isn't my Friday the 13th. What is this?
The aesthetics are different.
Yeah, and they never had those aesthetics again either. But my biggest problem was not the ending. Like the problem isn't who the killer was. It was how lame they did it. They did the psycho. Let's explain it all in just exposition, and then we have the impossible prop. Hey, look, he had a photo of his son in the back of his wallet, and it's like none of this makes sense anymore. This is just insulting to me as an audience member. Now, that said, and I always say this before I get into too much trouble, if you love the film, I'm glad you do. Because I don't want things not to exist or to be just vilified because I don't like them. Doesn't mean I don't have an opinion, and I'm not going to forcefully talk about that opinion. But, I love the fact the horror genre should be and has always been a big democracy. This is the one genre where if we all fall into line, the genre is dead tomorrow.
Exactly. I think it's that way with all film, though, really, because how are you going to have good debates if everybody agrees all the time?
Well, look at these films. I mean, there's very few perfect horror films. There's very few perfect films, period. But in the horror genre, it's an even rarer beast.
Yeah.
We kind of love them for their warts and the fact that they're not sandpapered down in the right places, right?
Yes.
We love the fact that they're kind of put together cheaply, quickly, and to make a buck. We like all that. So what I'm going to love is going to be different than what you love. Mm-hmm. Now, there's going to be certain films that you find 99% of horror fans like the original Halloween or like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
But they don't really define the genre. Not truthfully. They're the big picture. They're the 10,000 feet photo of the genre. Where the genre lives is in those collections in our houses. And they're always going to be different.
Yes. So. Like, I bet everybody has a bigger collection than me, because I honestly didn't really start collecting movies until just, I don't know, maybe the last 15 years or so. And I haven't really collected a whole lot of them. I always had cable. I was always spoiled by premium cable. And because my cousin worked at the cable company, she got me a deal where I got all of them. And I'm talking like there was probably 30 different movie stations for the last 20 years and at a decent price. So, and I just got rid of this like 2 months ago. So I've had all this opportunity being a stay-at-home mom to watch all of these movies over and over and over again, just like when I was a little kid and my mom would had HBO or Showtime or the movie channel, and I watched these movies over and over and over again back then. It's awesome when you're able to have access to something like that. But now that I don't have access to it, I do regret not buying more movies.
It's funny, we're talking Friday, so I have something I want to show.
Okay.
I'll show this too. My Captive Wild Woman lobby card took a header off the wall today, so I have to buy a new frame.
Ah.
Yeah, it didn't exactly make me overwhelmingly happy.
No, I wouldn't be either.
So this is I found this. I didn't even realize I still had it. But this is a signed Lar Park Lincoln.
Oh, I like that.
Well, you would, but here's the thing: it's so cheap. It was like made at the Costco down the block, or maybe the Staples. It's if you look at it, it is a bad color photocopy. But the best thing about it is it says "Keep Screaming" at the bottom, and it misspells my name horrifically at the top.
Oh, that makes it awesome.
despite the fact that she was handed something with my name spelled properly on it.
Ugh.
That was during the conversation in which she tried to sell me a timeshare.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
yeah, well, I can relate to this wrong spelling of the name because no one spells my name right ever.
They add that E, don't they?
They do. Or they spell it J-A, like I-M-E or something weird like that. But no, it's J-A-M-I for me.
I got it right everywhere, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Yes. Yeah, I don't believe in God, but you want to know what? Something was working in our favor.
I like a person who pays attention to detail.
You say that, but when I originally made the ident for this show, it read Thursday, May 21st.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it did. And it was actually up that way before I noticed. I'm like, that should be a TH, not that should be an ST, not a TH. So there's my attention to detail for you.
I did not notice. Normally I would, but I've been noticing a lot.
Orc wants to know Monster Vision or Up All Night.
Monster Vision. No. Up All Night. I don't know. I like them both. I watched them both.
So I didn't have cable of any sort until I moved out of my parents' house. So my formative years were not cable. And then when I moved out, we were like, I went from not having a lot at home to having nothing and eating a lot of ramen noodles. And it's always great. You go to the supermarket at the very end of the night, they put all the bread on sale. That's been out for 2 days. Yeah. So you could get bread for like 20 cents. I mean, it's ridiculous. A lot of toast, not necessarily with butter, depended. But yeah, I didn't have the ability to get cable then either. So it was, I was, I want to say 30 by the time I had cable.
Yeah, see, I didn't have it during my college years at all because I was poor. I was definitely poor during my college years. And it took, moving in with Scott, my husband. We moved in together before we were married. We were bad.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it right.
I think so, but some traditional people didn't think so, but I think it worked out best because look, we've been together 26 years, going on 27, and we've been married it'll be 20 years this year. So.
And he doesn't like horror, but you're still with him. So that's great.
Yeah. Cause he took me to all the horror movies. He made sure, to take me to everything, all the horror movies I wanted to see. He never argued about it, even though he really doesn't like them. I've gotten him into some horror. I mean, he now likes Castle Rock, which I got him into, he now likes, Twin Peaks to a point. I've got him watching David Lynch stuff and he loves The Shining, so he's into it. I try to get my son into this stuff, but he's just into his games. He's just into his gaming, and that's all he cares about.
So that's a big thing with the generation that is coming up right now. It's like they can't be into these movies as much as we are. They just, by definition, it's not in their DNA. Mm-mm. They're very into things that they can control and beat.
Yes.
Whereas, again, Friday the 13th Part 4. I felt defeated by that movie. I felt like that movie beat the hell out of me at 11 or whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. Completely different situation. You couldn't escape that movie. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first time you saw the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you felt like you were a crime victim.
I felt dirty. It was gritty. It was gross and it was dirty. And I remember feeling like it was risque to watch it.
Yeah. So a friend of mine once said, and I'm not going to attribute this, I'm just going to say it's not mine, that watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre makes you feel like someone took a belt sander to your eyes.
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
And what's funny about that is that when you go back and watch it again, it's not as bad as you thought. It's a lot. Your brain finishes a lot of what you think was there actually isn't. And now the part with like the hammer and stuff and the old man hitting her on the head, that is disturbing. But like I always thought that Leatherface dragging the guy in there that I saw something, and I never saw anything. I always thought I saw him put the person on the hook, and that's not there either. That's in my head. It's kind of weird how that happens.
Which is why when they do it in Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, and they actually do a graphic version of the hook scene, it doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
You sit there and go, okay, it's a gore shot.
Yeah, but I do like the remake a lot.
Oh, so do I. As do I. I would say this: the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't get enough credit for how it psychologically attacks the viewer. When, for instance, there's a sound effect when we see the chicken in the bird cage. It's a sound effect of a chicken cawing mixed with what sounds to be like cans on a string in the wind. Now, the bird is not actually making that noise. It's on the soundtrack. That sound is repeated low in the mix during the kitchen scene. And the point is, you're disturbed early about this bizarre imagery. And then later, when things are really desperate, it's just ratcheting it up. It's called, all these audio callbacks are just, it's putting you in a place that psychologically you have no good footing.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yep, that's how I felt. The first time I watched it, I was just like, I feel like I need to take a shower. I feel like I need a shower. But the remake, I didn't feel like that. I thought the remake was pretty cool. Even though it was gritty and it was more gruesome. By that time, I was fully adult, so I thought it was pretty cool.
And the big irony there is that almost every horror film likes to have their female cast get into a shower at some point, except for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Eric asks, Jamie, what novel scared you the most?
I got to think about that because I've read a lot of Stephen King books. I'm going to have to say Pet Sematary scared me pretty bad. But I think The Shining probably scared me the most growing up out of all the books I read. I also used to like to read the V.C. Andrews books, Flowers in the Attic, Petals on the Wind, those books. And I know they're not exactly horror, but they're disturbing. They're extremely disturbing. And in a way, they are kind of horror in a way. And those books used to kind of freak me out too, because the idea of a tyrant type grandma, locking you in the attic forever for so long that you end up having incest with your relatives. It's just sick, and if you read further on in the books, it goes further with that, and they actually make a whole family and stuff, and it's disturbing. So if you guys are looking to read something good out there, V.C. Andrews.
Hey, Jamie, could you do me a favor? Could you carry the show for about a minute while I do something?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So you guys got any questions for me? I'm ready to answer. Scariest Peaks villain other than Bob? I'm going to have to go with Leland. I mean, I don't think Leland was innocent. I think Leland knew what he was doing. I don't think Leland was innocent one bit. I don't think it was fully Bob. I think in order for Bob to be in Leland, he had to have some sort of badness in him to begin with. Anybody else got any questions for me? Oh, The Shining or The Thing? I'm going to go with The Shining, even though I really love The Thing and I really, really love Carpenter. As a matter of fact, the main thing we were going to talk about tonight is Carpenter, and we haven't even started that yet. So I'm hoping we'll get to that eventually. But I have a love for John Carpenter movies quite a bit. But I'm still going to go with The Shining, because how can you not? I mean, it's one of the best movies ever made. The cinematography is incredible, and Jack Nicholson's performance is outstanding. So what's your go-to wing spot? Where do I get wings? Oh, I make them. I make my own. I am the reason for barbecue medium chicken wings in this area. I started that trend. I used to work in a pizza and wing restaurant growing up when I was in high school. And one day I was just bored and I started mixing things, and I mixed up medium sauce with barbecue sauce and started eating it. And I said, this is yummy. And I gave it to my boss and I said, check this out. And he ended up putting it on the menu. And then pretty soon all of the restaurants in my area started putting it on the menu. I mean, I'm sure other people in other areas got the same idea and it couldn't be just me alone. But back when I was working at this place, I definitely started that trend in my area. So yes, I make my own at home.
So the important question there is, do you clip them or do you leave the point?
I buy them without the point.
Oh.
Yep. I buy them just the drum and then the flats. And then I have a fryer that we got as a wedding gift, and I fry them up and put them in the sauce, and yummy, yummy.
Have you come over to the dark side of the air fryer?
No, but I've heard a lot about it and I'm looking into it.
Amazing.
I've heard everybody says that. My brother-in-law has one, and we were going to go over to his house to have chicken wings, but then this whole COVID thing happened and now we can't. So that's kind of stinky.
There's one for you.
Who's a horror author that you think should get more attention? I haven't been reading a lot of more recent stuff. So, and I'm still addicted to King. Most of what I get is Stephen King related. I do like Dean Koontz, but I know that he's an older one. As far as who's new, I'm not really sure. I could use some recommendations if you guys want to give me some, because I would love to get into someone new. Brian Hodge.
I can't go wrong with anything the man has ever published. Although, if you're going to buy Dark Advent, be aware that you need a magnifying glass to read it.
Oh, I'll definitely stay away from that one.
Not an exaggeration. It's a stand-sized novel about the end of the world, but it comes in at about 400 pages because they simply reduced the text down.
Oh man,
it's horrific.
Yeah, well, I already have to wear bifocals now, so I'm gonna stay away from that one.
And I've been pimping this for the last month or so. This is a short story collection by Kathy Koja. She's amazing. She's one of the strongest voices in the genre over the last 30 years, and she could definitely use a lot more attention as well.
Yeah, I'll have to look into her too. I'm looking for new people to read, so anybody, I'll take all kinds of suggestions.
I'm sure everyone expected me to pimp myself, and I'm not going to do that.
I'll read your stuff. I already plan on that. Which final girl do I want to play in a spinoff? Ooh, that's tough. I'd like to be Ginny. You know, that would be cool. Or even Alice from Friday the 13th. If I was going to be able to take over a role, I would like that. That would be cool. Nancy from Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street. I definitely would like that. Well, that's probably it, because I can't think of any other well, maybe I can't count Sydney from Scream, because there's more than one person that lives through that. And I got to tell you, in Scream 5, when it comes out, they better have all three living through it again, because I will be very highly disappointed if they kill everybody. Because what's impressed me is that they've kept them all alive, which is unusual and unique for the genre.
I don't think I'd be a good final girl no matter what I was cast as. I think my answer will be Natalie from Hellfest, but
oh yes,
I don't think I have the cleavage for it. So
actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. I would like to be I can't remember her name in Cabin in the Woods, because, and nobody's going to like to hear this, but I would have shot him, and because the whole world, I'm not going to let the whole world die because my friend, I would say, I'm sorry, dude.
He was already hurt anyway, right?
Right.
I mean,
But
there's a good chance it wouldn't have mattered.
he
So,
did save her. So that is really, really awful of me to think. But if I had to be serious about it, I would definitely have shot him.
oh yeah,
Definitely.
oh
Because
sure.
it's that of the world. And I'm not one to let the world die.
I might be the one that let the world die, but I'd still shot him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. DJ Donnelly asked, American Werewolf in London or The Thing from 82, which has the better practical effects?
I'm going to go with The Thing because I love Carpenter. And I'm going to go with The Thing also because I think it didn't get the credit that it deserved from the higher up people. I know that London did. I mean, the American Werewolf in London, it's great. It's got a great transformation scene. But if you ask me, the better transformation scene comes out of The Howling. The transformation scene in The Howling when he's behind her and she's watching that screen and you can see his, oh, that is just disturbing. That movie, I miss that. I want to see that movie again. It's been a long time and I want to watch it again. The Howling.
Well, The Howling has a different approach to its special effects, right?
It does.
All the special effects sequence happen inside an existing scene that's moving the plot forward. American Werewolf in London, it's like it just stops dead and says, "Okay, let's have a showreel moment," and it's going to last 8 minutes.
Yeah, and it's great and it's excruciating.
Right. But it doesn't feel like part of the movie as much as it feels like a special effects sequence.
Exactly.
Whereas the Howling never stops to do that. It
No.
just keeps rolling. I mean, yes, in the cabin, the big transformation there, it's showy, but it's also really smart because it's this woman watching it happen in front of her.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
I think it's the better film in total, and I know I'm kind of in the minority about that, and it's not just my Landis aversion, but I do think it's a better film.
I do too. I definitely would watch The Howling and definitely over American Werewolf in London. And actually, I'd watch American Werewolf in Paris over American Werewolf in London, to be totally honest, because I actually like that movie. It's fun. It's entertaining. I think I like the music. I liked it. I saw it at the theater when it came out.
As did I. I won't say I like the movie. I think it deserves a little bit more credit than it gets, though, because people have it like as one of the worst sequels of all time.
Why?
And it's like, I mean, the CGI werewolf looks goofy. I get it, but the movie is patterned after a sex comedy.
Yeah.
If you look at how the structure of the film is made, and what an ingenious way to kind of subvert the original film.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really clever, and it doesn't completely work, but it's way better than its reputation. And if those special effects would just be updated to look decent, I think it'd have more fans than it does. But
yeah, I agree. I actually thought it was pretty good, and I watched it a bunch of times. It's one of those movies that back in the late 90s used to play on HBO all the time, and so it was always on. I remember filling out my wedding invitations and the movie playing as I'm watching, filling out my wedding invitations. And yeah, maybe that's why I love that movie so much. It reminds me of such happy things.
Yeah, it's a very European film in its mentality, and that's something that wasn't really what people wanted, but it kind of is the promise of the title of the film.
Yeah.
So again, I can't find hate for that movie. This isn't a situation like the Fog remake or something like that, which you just can't defend.
No, I just watched that, like a few weeks ago, and because it was on before I got rid of my cable, and I was just like, this is bad. It's not good. I used to like the original to a point, but it's not one of my favorite Carpenter movies. Carpenter, I'm going to go with, Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, and Vampires. are my favorite. And there's probably, and They Live. I have to add They Live because none of my friends would go with me to see They Live except for one. And she enjoyed it just as much as I did. But all my friends thought it was going to be stupid. They didn't understand the political undertones in it. And I did, because I've always been a little on the political side. So I went and saw that movie and enjoyed it. And I to this day think it has the best fight scene in any movie ever made.
Have you seen The Hunt yet?
No.
So The Hunt ends with what I think might be a better fight scene. I know that's heresy, but it's two ladies just destroying each other for about like 9 minutes.
And it's two ladies.
It's oh my god, though, when you get there, you'll understand what I mean. It's great. It really is. As much as I pick on Blumhouse, because they deserve it, this year they did release a film that is going to be in my top 10 probably come the end of the year.
Were they the ones that put out Sinister?
Yes.
Because I like Sinister. I think Sinister 1 and Sinister 2 were really, really good movies. They could have been better, I think. But for what they are, they're actually pretty good. And if you want to go for, like, I'm not big on movie monsters, you know. I've never really, I don't know if you could call Jason a monster, I suppose. But that's, you know, I don't know. The thing with Sinister that bothers me is the idea that your children are being taken over by a force and going to kill you and your whole family. That's terrifying to me. And that's what disturbed me about it. And I really enjoyed the first one, and I really enjoyed the second one. I hope they make more.
I really like the first film. I think the second film, the problem I have is the found footage elements of it, the murders, are not really things that could be set up. It really stretches plausibility a little bit too far for me, and I'm going, I don't know.
Yeah, by a kid.
Right.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, there's things with crocodiles and stuff, and you're like, what?
The rats underneath the hot pails on the people. Yeah. Oh, that was disturbing. But yes, I really like that.
But that's from a period where Blumhouse was still really just, if someone came to them with a high concept, low budget, 5 location film, they greenlit it, they got it to market. It spent $3 million to make it and $15 million to promote it, and it would make back its money in its opening weekend. And then, unfortunately, although I like the Purge films pushed them to a different level, I think. Yeah, and they felt like they had to be more like a traditional studio.
I've only seen the first Purge movie, and I didn't like it all that much. I mean, it was okay, it was good, but it didn't catch my interest to allow me or make me want to watch the second one or the third. And I know there's been a few since, and I just haven't seen any of them because they just don't, I don't know. I just didn't like them. I didn't like it.
I like them, but I can't tell them apart. And that's a problem.
That ultimately. One was Ethan Hawke too, right? Was he in the Purge?
In the first film, yeah. The first film's the one you can tell apart because it's the small one.
Yeah.
So Christian Hannah Horror finally made a broadcast live. So say hello to Christian.
Hi, Christian.
And I'm reading comments that I shouldn't read.
That's okay.
So, but I think Blumhouse is in really kind of where horror is at this moment, right? I think the remake reboot cycle has finally caught up to the studios themselves, and they're kind of floundering, except A24 and the Reborn Hammer Studios, which put out The Lodge this year, which is another one of this year's big wins.
I haven't seen that yet.
Do you like, I'm assuming you like really dark films thematically?
Yes.
Because there's no jokes, there's no laughter in that movie.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're down for that, which I am very down for that.
Me too.
I enjoyed it quite a lot. I was shocked that it came out commercially because it's a little bit too dark for like Cineplexes.
Yeah.
So my point was, though, we have these two studios that are trying to do something to kind of save horror from itself. How do you feel about A24?
I am a member of their Facebook page. I like their movies. I've seen Hereditary. I've seen Midsummer. I saw Under the Silver Lake. I haven't seen The Lighthouse yet, but I'm getting there. I haven't seen Good Time yet, but I'm getting there. How I felt about Midsummer was it was okay, but it didn't quite get there for me. It had disturbing elements, but it wasn't really scary, and it was too predictable for me. I predicted every single thing that was going to happen. I mean, you got to be completely out of it to not notice that there's period blood in his drink. You know, and I just, as soon as I saw that, I knew exactly what was going to happen. So it was too predictable for me. But Hereditary was incredible, scared the bejesus out of me. Every time I watch it, I see something new and make new connections. And that guy knows his demonology. He really knows it. He's not kidding. He used real demons. Those are real. You can look them up. They're in the Goetia, and it's scary.
I think Hereditary is a stone cold classic.
It is good.
And it's shocking because normally you can look back and see the film that obviously inspired it, right? You can look back in most cases when something comes out, you go, well, there's this that came out that was. Hereditary really doesn't have an analog like that. And that's kind of, at least not one that I'm familiar with, and I think I would be familiar with it.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how this film is going to look to an audience in 20 years, because if it plays the way I think it is, it really is what it was promoted as, which is The Exorcist for this generation.
Yes. It was so, Toni Collette was so good in it. She scared me to death. And I've watched a lot of videos, like, I like to watch videos where they're talking about the deep meaning behind things, and her whole thing, it all is like a big cycle of abuse. It's if you want to, like, instead of it being about, demonology and cults, if you really look at it, what it really is about is abuse. It's a cycle of abuse in families, and it's pretty intense. And it's got some moments where you're like, holy, like when the girl's head hits the telephone pole. I wasn't expecting that, and that blew my mind. And then that scene where she's up on the ceiling, but you have to look really, really close to see her up there. And I didn't notice it the first time through. I noticed it the second time through, which it impressed me. That movie impressed me big time. And I like the cinematography a lot. And I will say that about Midsummer too, is that the cinematography is gorgeous.
I don't want to make this too spoilery, but I'm about to spoil both films. Sorry. So it's funny because you're right about the thematics, but specifically Hereditary is about a family that doesn't talk. And the funny thing is, A Quiet Place is as well. But to me, A Quiet Place kind of falls apart because it has to be really obvious about its message. Having the dad scream out at the daughter, "I love you!" He finally talks and he dies, and we get it. Then the family can be one, and that's the sacrifice that was necessary. Hereditary does the same thing, so much more bold. That dinner speech is a subversion of where we expect, because we expect them to finally come together out of the tragedy, and no, the spiral goes hardcore in the other direction. So instead of making it a therapeutic film, it decides to just go full on Greek tragedy. And to me, that's the bolder choice. So thematically, the two films are very similar. But what one film decided to do makes it, I think, a stone cold classic that's going to be put in that tier of like the top 10 horror films of all time.
I agree.
Not necessarily my favorite 10 films of all time, but of the top 10, just qualitatively.
Yeah.
And I think A Quiet Place is one of those things that made a lot of money, and I think is going to be a footnote for some careers.
Now, I haven't watched A Quiet Place. I have it in my queue. And I'm going to watch it because John Krasinski happened to make part of A Quiet Place 2 right near me. He in Dunkirk, New York. And I thought that was pretty freaking fascinating. I wanted to get in as an extra, but I didn't catch the ad in time, so I wasn't able to do that. But it would have been cool to be an extra in there. But yeah, he made part of that movie like close, like half an hour from me.
Yeah, I had a movie made about a half hour from me too.
That's cool.
back in 1979.
I have a funny story about the Breakfast Club. See, they made the Breakfast Club in a school that was built by the same company that built my junior high school. So when I watch the Breakfast Club, I literally see my school. I related all of us from that went to Jefferson Junior High. We all and Rogers Elementary, because they built that school too. It's like watching my own school in a movie, and the only difference in the library is that we didn't have that big sculpture, and we only had a little loft upstairs with no radio station. We had a little loft classroom upstairs. Otherwise it's identical, and it's pretty weird. I like that. They made that in like close to my house. I can't remember exactly where, but I know the school is around here, or not around here, but at least 2 hours away or something like that.
It's always interesting that when a film is made near you, it becomes so much more relatable. And it's not necessarily that you recognize the location. It's just the environment makes sense to you. So the film that was shot near me, of course, is the film Over My Shoulder. The original Friday the 13th was shot.
Oh, yeah.
Practically in my backyard. And the truth is, like, I didn't know that when I saw the film as a kid. But it was the first film that, my God, that looks real to me. Not because of how it was shot or the acting, which the acting is fine, but it's not good acting necessarily. It was just that the topography made sense to me. I could tell on some level, like, this is here.
Yeah, it looks like New England area. I mean, it looks like here too. I mean, whenever I see Niagara Falls, I take Niagara Falls for granted. I know it's close to me. I've seen it 1,000 times. I mean, it's just this regular thing in my life, just it's there. And I take it for granted, and I forget that it's like this humongous seventh wonder of the world or whatever, And so whenever I see it in a movie, I'm pretty impressed. Like, oh, that's near me. And I forget how beautiful it is.
I just want you to tell Orc that he cannot send you a Mountain Dew through the mail.
No, I wouldn't do that. Orc. It's probably not a good idea. It'll get here. It'll be all flat from them shaking the box. It probably won't taste good. It's probably not a good idea, but I do appreciate the offer.
So Jacob McCullum says, Hereditary is comparable to Pet Sematary, The Haunting of Julia, and Lake Mungo in the way it deals with fate, the loss of a loved one, and not being able to control your own fate. So it's funny because he mentioned Haunting of Julia, which is one of my very favorite horror films because it's one of the few films that actually scares me. You know what all those films have in common? They all are smart enough to use grief inside a horror film. At the start of all of my videos, there's a list of emotions that the horror films try to evoke, and they're not just scaring you or grossing you out. And one of them is despair, and grief is one of those emotions that it's a dark emotion, and it fits into the horror genre very smartly. And it really, when it's done well, it's like the ace in the hole. It pushes the films to the next level. The Exorcist is a scary film, but that's not what's really scary. The scariest scene in The Exorcist is when they're in the basement and Ellen Barkin's doing her laundry, and she turns to Father Karras and says, "She's going to die, isn't she?"
Yeah.
And you look at her face and she's just wrecked.
Yeah.
It's not scary. It's sad.
It's emotional.
And when you carry sadness forward, all the other emotions that you can play with just open up. So it's one of those things like, I love slashers as much as you do. But honestly, someday someone's going to make a slasher film that adds grief to the picture. Real grief. And they're going to nail this out of the park. Final Girls did it in a way, but it's such a fun movie that it doesn't really play. But someone someday is going to do it.
I hope they do. I want to see that.
Yeah.
I saw James ask a question, or he asked why I skipped on Precinct 13. Well, I forgot about it. And I was really young when that came out, so I actually didn't see it until the remake.
The remake has Kim Coates in a very small role.
Does it?
It does. He's a guard who dies like immediately.
Oh.
I only mention that because there's a long-running joke about Christina Ricci and Kim Coates on the former Sausage Factory.
Stu, I didn't put on my kitty ear ones tonight because I'm wearing black, so I wanted it to all blend. If I was wearing white, I would wear my kitty ears.
It's very rare that someone dresses up for me, so I'm okay with that. Question to Lauren: with Bride of Frankenstein being your favorite movie, then you class James Whale as your favorite director? No, I don't. So the problem is when you start doing that, when you say, well, this is my favorite film, so then that everyone in it has to be my favorite, right? The problem is you're ignoring that there's people who held up incredible projects that on their shoulders, and maybe the film wasn't, overall the best, but they were in their role as director were, much more powerful. Probably this will surprise people. I think the best director who's worked in the genre is probably Nicholas Roeg. I think if you look at overall and not just pinpoint down to one movie, it's pretty strong. But
who is he? I'm trying to remember what he's done.
Don't Look Now.
Oh, yes, I love that movie. It's been a while since I saw it.
No one ever talks about it.
I don't know why, because it's scary. That last bit, oh my gosh, that's one of the most terrifying things. And it's funny if you compare that with like the end of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you got to ask yourself, which is scarier? Which ending is scarier? I think Don't Look Now is got a scarier ending with that little. You think he's following his daughter?
Exactly. Didn't Argento basically rob that ending for Phenomena? By the way,
he might have
in his own kind of like, I don't know, distant way.
It's been a while since I saw Phenomena. I saw I've seen Suspiria recently, and I watched you guys do your commentary on opera, which I hadn't seen since like the early 90s, which I enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoyed watching you guys do that. That was awesome.
Well, Cam is actually more of a fan of that particular movie than I am. I do like it, but he was like encyclopedic, so he's the man for that movie.
Yeah.
So Jacob also asks, do you think Coffin Joe qualifies as a horror icon? Let me tell you something. He should.
Yeah.
But this goes back to one of my old chenards, I guess. If you don't exist, if you're not an American, it's so hard, or if you didn't primarily work in America, it's so hard to get that status. And
or
it's not fair.
Who he is. Some people don't even know who he is, I don't think, because isn't he he's a Mexican?
Brazilian.
Or Brazilian. Okay. I'm sorry. Nomenclature.
It's cool. It's cool. No, but that's the whole point. Like most people, if they've seen any of his films, it's probably at Midnight I'll Take Your Soul. But reality is the man worked for.
Hang on one second. I'm so sorry.
The man worked for 35, 40 years with breaks, and he worked in the genre probably exclusively. And
sorry about that. I forgot my alarm was supposed to go off. Tell me to take my medication.
Well, we want you to take your medication, definitely.
Yes. Sorry about that.
So Stu asks, did you enjoy Gods and Monsters? I do enjoy that movie. I just think it's too narrow in its approach to Bride of Frankenstein.
I don't think I've seen that.
Well, it's a drama about James Whale. And it's specifically set at the time of the filming of Bride of Frankenstein. My thing is, Bride of Frankenstein is not a gay parable in itself, although it works as it. I don't like dismissing people as just the sum of their sexuality. That's just grotesque to me. So yes, James Whale was gay. And he was also a great director. And he was also a veteran. And he was also a lot of things. He was making a film about the ultimate outsider. And I think that's why it's relatable to everyone. Gay people may look at it and say, hey, I identify with it because I'm gay and I feel like an outsider. But then someone who grew up in a small town but never fit into that small town is going to feel those same emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to think that it's almost universal to the horror audience because I stand by this. I don't think any of us were the popular kids in school. I think by nature of being drawn to this stuff, we were always going to be set to the side. We were always going to marginalize ourselves.
Well,
So
I can't say that about me because I'm more like Laura Palmer. I had a double life. Yeah, I was, Little Miss Perfect in school, got good grades, cheerleading, the whole 9 yards. And then I was smoking in my cheerleading uniform at parties afterwards and after the games and going drinking in my cheerleading uniform and, just doing things that I wasn't supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be representing my school. And I was a little wild. And in college too, do you know how we made money to get new uniforms and new pom-poms in college? We had house parties, keg parties, and we made a lot of money. And our advisor was none the wiser, which I think is funny.
So,
and I was also the vice president of the student government at my college.
Why do I think that you derailed the train at some point?
Derailed the train? Like my own train?
No, a literal train.
I'm lost on that one.
You can keep giving us your dirty secrets. It's fine. I'm sure that statute of limitation is passed on most of this.
Yeah, those are my dirty secrets. I have a double life. I have a sweet side and a dark side. I'm like a walking yin yang. It's the Gemini thing.
Christian has a question for you.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
If I live the Return of the Living Dead, yes. More than I like most zombie movies. That one is a fun one. I'm not a big fan of the zombie genre at all. I don't follow it. Like people tell me all the time, I do play games. I like to play. I have a PlayStation 4. I have an Xbox 360 and my son has an Xbox One and we do play games. But I don't, what was I answering now? I forgot.
Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah. I don't like the zombie genre to the point where I don't want to play things like The Last of Us or any of the other zombie genre games. I'll play Silent Hill, which to me is not zombies. Those are monsters. You're killing monsters. I'll play Alan Wake. I'll play, Alice, Madness Returns. I play certain things, but I won't play like the zombie games. My son, he's trying to get me to play The Last of Us. He bought it for me for Christmas and he's been pushing me on it. And I will eventually get into it. It's just that I'm not a big fan of the zombie genre, I think, because it's literally unrealistic. Now, if you go, for something like it's a virus that's caused it, I might like it a little better. Maybe 28 Days Later was okay, but still not. If you ask me to list my 50 favorite movies, it's not going to be in it. But Return of the Living Dead will be. And that's because it's fun. It's fun. It's crazy. It's hilarious. It made me laugh. Same with the sequel. And if it's fun and crazy and made me laugh and I loved it in the 80s, I'm probably going to love it forever. So, yes, I do love that one.
So what about like zombie films before Night of the Living Dead? So something like I Walked with a Zombie, which it's, more of the voodoo traditional version of a zombie rather than a flesh eater.
I can remember, being a kid and the, Sunday afternoon movies would be on in the background. And a lot of times it'd be something like that, like White Zombie or these other movies from, like Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, all those old movies. But I've never really sat and watched them close enough maybe a few of them, but not many, for me to be able to say whether I really liked them or not. And I probably didn't see that one. And if I did see it, I probably wouldn't know I saw it.
Well,
I'll remember the ones that caught my eye,
I might have to give you some homework before you're on next.
Okay.
And at this point, so we've been going for about an hour 10. So we're gonna wrap it up shortly. We're gonna get some more questions in. So start thinking of your final comments.
Okay.
Arthur Bates asks, "Did you like the film The Descent?"
I did, for what it was. It didn't scare me. That's the thing. I want to be scared, and if it doesn't scare me, then it might not stay in my mind. It might go in and go right back out. And that was one of them that I was just like the Blair Witch Project. I saw it in the theater. I didn't, before I went to the theater and saw it, I did all the research like everybody else did. I was looking on the internet, watching that documentary on, the Sci-Fi Channel. And I thought it was real until 2 days before I went to go watch it. They had them on TV and they were all alive and they were all, and I was like, oh, this ruins everything. This ruins everything. And I was like, all right, but I'm still going to go in. I'm still going to see it. And I went in and I saw it and I was impressed. And actually, I enjoy it more now than I did then, because now I know what it is and I can love it for what it is. And I see a lot more creativity in it now than I used to back then. But when I was in the theater and I saw that movie, I was like, it is what it is, and it's not scary. It didn't scare me one bit. And I like to be scared.
I like The Descent, but I don't find myself revisiting it very often because of this simple reason. Stop overcranking your action scenes to try and make the villains seem faster and scarier.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. For myself, just you have to invest in myself in the situation, but either through the characters or the dynamics or the setting. And it had all those elements, but then it felt the need to do all this flashy stuff, obviously of its time editing and special effects. And I don't think it had a chance to be as classic as it probably should have been. Right now, it's what I call a programmer, a film that when it's on, you watch it, you don't have any problem with it, but you're not looking for the next time you are going to watch it. It comes across your radar.
Right. It's as far as it being a good one for a bunch of girls being kick-ass in a movie or whatever. I did like it for that reason, but it just wasn't scary enough.
Well, here's the thing, and we'll make this kind of final topic, but the horror genre has always had a strong tendency to put females into strong positions, not necessarily leadership positions where they're commanding other people, but the value of the individual woman has always been a strong recurrent theme in horror. That doesn't mean all female characters, by the way, and there's a good reason for that. Because once you say all of anything is a certain way, it becomes a parody of itself. It becomes a meme, right?
Right.
But by having your Laurie Strodes rise to the occasion, or your Alice Hardys, or your Sally Harvesties, immediately the genre is saying, hey, when pushed against a wall, the normal person, no matter what you are, what your gender, your race, your background, can rise up. There is an empowerment message built into the structure of the horror film. Today, there seems to be a need to actually put a pronouncement in the film about the power of women. And I just think of it as bad writing.
Yeah.
The message has nothing to do with the message at all to me. It's just, that's poor writing. When you have to tell your audience what to feel, you have a different perspective on this just by nature of your gender, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a valuable perspective. So I want you to go ahead and free associate off that. But I just want to let you know that's I'm not asking you the question because you're a woman. I'm asking you the question because you have a different perspective, because you're a woman. Does that difference make sense to you?
Yeah. What exactly is your question, though? Like,
so what do you think's going on with who do they think they're appealing to by making transparently agenda-driven films inside the genre?
It's you want my honest opinion, it's upstate. They're tooting their own horn. They like themselves. It's all about themselves. They aren't doing it to make society better, because honestly, if you want to make society better, think of a better way to do it. You're not going to make society better by force feeding it down their throats. So this whole idea of like making, a all woman cast, Ghostbusters, I saw it once. I wasn't impressed. It wasn't good. It was awful, to be honest. And I wasn't impressed because why push the woman thing? You don't need to. It will happen naturally if you push it, but you got to push it under the radar. You can't push it in people's faces and say, you have to feel this way. That's where PC culture goes wrong. PC, there's nothing wrong with political correctness. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is the way that people have stigmatized it. And because of that, there's people out there that think that the way to fix that is to just hammer it down. And it's not. It's not. It's flamboyancy won't work. You need to calm it down. You need to tone it down. You need to make movies with strong women characters, but not advertise that they're strong women characters. You have to allow your audience to be smart enough to feel it themselves. That's what I think about that.
And I
personally feel empowered by women characters. And part of my love of Lynch is because, and a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but he empowers women. He shows abuses of women. And I like that. I'm impressed with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're going to bother to put the subject of abuse in a film, you need to actually put it on screen.
Yes.
Because if you're going to bother to approach a subject, it deserves the severity and the gravity of the subject. So in other words, it's not okay to have a film tiptoe around a subject. If you're going to commit to it, that's the only way it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
In India right now, there's a film that came out this year. It's called early this year, called Slapped, Thapad, if you want the Indian title, starring Taapsee Pannu, who was, of course, the lead from Game Over. That's what put it on my radar. But it's not a horror film. It's a drama about a woman who's slapped by her husband during a dinner party. And in Indian culture, that has been accepted for far too long.
Yes.
And this is a film specifically about why that's not okay. So it sounds like it's immediately an agenda-driven film. But when you watch the film, it just plays out of a drama of what would happen if this scenario went by and the woman said, I'm not going to take it. It's not okay. So it's interesting because I think the American approach at the moment would be to make this to make every male character on screen, Jack the Ripper or a complete idiot, and all the female characters would be lily white and pure of heart. And the message becomes a parody, a joke when you do that. And that film is so much more subtle about what is obviously a political motivation. So it's funny because in other countries, they're able to do these films with messages, but because they show some restraint and some good writing is in place, the films still land. We could do the message films here and not have them be laughable, like, your Black Christmases or your Ghostbusters 2016. When did that movie come out?
Yeah, 2016 or 17. I can't remember which, but I just didn't think it was. As soon as I heard they were going to do it, I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. Don't do this. Don't make this movie. Don't push it down people's throats. Things aren't working like that. Things don't work that way. And I just wish that they would make more strong women characters without shoving it down people's throats.
Do you want me to ruin that movie even further for you?
Go ahead.
I'm going to say something, and when I say it, you're going to be like, oh my God, they didn't think of that? You want female Ghostbusters? Sigourney Weaver and Annie Potts. Done.
Yep.
They didn't have to do this.
No, it was an unnecessary movie. They did it for that drove me nuts. They did it for the sake of making one with just women. And it bothers me. It bothers me as a woman. It bothers me. I think it hurts feminism. I don't think it helps it at all. I think it hurts it. And I have a problem with a lot of feminist women, with their over flamboyancy. I think everybody needs to calm down because subtlety works.
I've said this too much too, so I should really find a different example. But who I think that Denzel Washington is the greatest civil rights leader of our time. Because here's the thing, no one dislikes a Denzel Washington movie.
No,
he's no matter how you cut it, he's one of the best living actors we got.
Yeah.
He has great instincts about what projects to take on, and he takes on a variety of projects, so he's not just doing one thing over and over. Everyone respects Denzel Washington. So the person who has a natural hatred, at some point they're going to see one of his films, and they're going to walk out saying, at the very least, well, I like that guy. And that's how it starts. That's how you win hearts and minds over. Not by screaming at people,
right?
But by just saying, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be a good human being, and I'm going to be the best at what I do. Neil deGrasse Tyson is the same thing. Is a matter of, he's a guy who's bringing science to everyone.
Yes.
And he's the best spokesperson for it. His race is irrelevant. And that's the future. The people who are just so damn good that whatever hostility or bad feelings you have about that person's origin or background, they disappear. Because when it disappears away from one person, it'll disappear from everyone eventually. I really believe that.
I agree.
All right. So I'm going to put up a little ident to show people where they can reach you. And then on the other side, we'll have your final thoughts, and then we'll get you out of here so you can actually enjoy the rest of your evening. I was going to say life. I'm not being that bold, just the evening. All right.
Seeing myself in that mask is disturbing.
You told me to pick whatever photo I could find, so
I know you did good. I thought that was really good, actually, because it's very fitting. It's very fitting.
All right. So, as a parting thought to our chatters and all the people watching in the weeks and weeks to come, what say you?
I say let's build something. Let's build a community. Let's build something here. I think a lot of us, we have a lot in common. I think we should all be talking with each other. I think that how good things happen and how good creativity comes about is when a bunch of creative minds get together and start something. I say let's start something. And people, be nice to each other out there. Be nice to each other out there. It's hard life out there right now. People are struggling. Be cautious, be caring, and love one another.
Hard for me to top that. So all I'm going to say is that the show will return on Saturday evening at, I believe 8:30 is what we decided on. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It's 9 o'clock. We'll be on the air with Mr. Christian Hannah Horror as my guest. But tomorrow I'm actually going to be guesting on Andrew and Christian's show, the Firefly Family Podcast, where we'll be watching and commenting on Suspiria. So if you want to join me over on that channel, that is going to be in the notes below because I am not coming up with it. So anyway, have a nice night, guys. Thanks for everyone who joined us, and please give the video a thumbs up. Direct anyone else you can towards it, and leave a comment or 20 in the comments below. I try to respond to everyone. Say good night. Thank you, Jamie, for coming on.
Yep, good night.
All right.